Once a month, when the moon reaches its highest point in the sky and the wild creatures call out to the night, he emerges from a private sanctuary in an undisclosed location outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. Arrayed in his priestly vestments, carrying forth the good news that comic books and graphic novels aren't just for kids, that they aren't just mass and spandex superheroes, that storytelling in a graphic format can be so much more. He is the Graphic Novel Apostle.
Hello and welcome back to the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ohrenberger. Well, it's another mini-episode week, and I suppose after a 2-hour and 23-minute episode last week from our coverage of Gideon Falls with Stephen Hovatter, you're probably ready for a shorter one. Now, you may have noticed when looking at the numbering for this episode as episode 8 that we've got a new numbering system. Folks, I love a complicated numbering system. And I really thought that this episode 1, episode 1A with some feedback, episode 2, episode 2A, a mini episode with some feedback would work out for us, but I think that's really just not going to play out the way I originally thought it would. And so as we continue to experiment and figure out how this podcast ought to work, we're going to go just to a regular old episode 8, episode 9, episode 10 kind of format. Hurts my heart a little bit, but I think it'll make more sense in the long run. For those of you who did listen to our episode with Stephen Hovatter last week on Gideon Falls, which thank you for listening to it, and boy, I know it was long, but I really had a good time doing that episode. In listening back to it, though, this week, and I didn't realize quite the extent of it when I was editing the podcast, I realized that I had lowered Stephen's microphone just a little bit too much, and there are points where you really had to turn it up to hear him well. I'm going to go back sometime this week and see if I can fix that audio just a bit. Who knows, maybe I'll send out a lifeline to Travell as well, and I'm learning, guys. We'll get this stuff cleaned up along the way. But thank you so much for sticking with me. Before we get into the two comics that I want to discuss today, I want to give you just a quick preview of the full episode that we'll have next Monday. We're going to discuss Friday, Book 1. It's called The First Day of Christmas, written by Ed Brubaker with art by Marcos Martin. We'll go through those credits in greater detail when we get to that episode next week, and my guest, very excited for this, is my mom, Karen Ohrenberger. I traveled this past week to North Carolina to where she and my dad live. We dropped Garrett off there for about a week of grandparent time, and I'm wishing them all the good luck and best wishes this week. But while I was there in North Carolina, we went ahead and recorded that episode. It's going to be our shortest full episode so far, coming in at just over an hour in length. But it was a really cool discussion, and I'm looking forward to you guys hearing it. So this week, I want to talk about 2 books from my pull list. Now, neither of these books had a new issue this week, but there's still 2 newer books that I'd wanted to talk about here on the show, and I just hadn't had a chance to up to this point. First, we're going to talk about The Big Burn, Issue 1, which is out from DSTLRY. And then next, we're going to talk about Falling in Love on the Path to Hell, Issues 1 and 2 of which are out so far from Image Comics. Let's start with The Big Burn. For the credits on this book, it was written by Joe Henderson, with art by Lee Garbett, including the main cover, which is really beautiful. I'll have a picture of it up on our Instagram site at Graphic Novel Apostle, so you can take a look at that there, and of course I'll also include a couple of pages from the interior art, which is very impressive. Colors for this book are by Lee Loughridge, letters by Simon Bowland, and as I said before, it was published by DSTLRY. Now, we discussed at least one DSTLRY book before on another mini-episode, White Boat by Scott Snyder with art by Francesco Francavilla. And as we discussed in that one, books from DSTLRY are done in this prestige format. So they're oversized in length from a regular comic book, they're physically oversized from a regular comic book, and they come in square-bound format. They're really pretty. So with The Big Burn, we have got a heist story, but this is a heist story with a devilish twist. At the center of the story, we have a young criminal couple in love, Owen and Carly, and the story is told from Owen's point of view. They meet when they separately rob the same bank at the same time. Both of them are first-time bank robbers who really only have half of what they need to be successful in this new career they find themselves undertaking. Carly is an intricate planner, but she lacks the cool to improvise when things don't go to plan. Owen has the suavite and cunning to pull off a good con and the instincts to know when to take a bigger risk, but he lacks the discipline to prepare a proper heist. After helping each other get out of a jam on what would otherwise be a failed first robbery attempt that would land them both in prison, they start a whirlwind romance and a crime spree at the same time. This is fun to watch unfold for a couple of pages, but eventually they get caught. And as they're riding in the back of a paddy wagon on the way to jail, realizing that they're about to wind up in prison probably for a very long time, the devil himself appears to them and offers them the classic Faustian bargain, their freedom in exchange for their souls. Well, they go ahead and make this deal willingly. But soon thereafter, they realize that their souls were what allowed them to enjoy life, to live it to its fullest, and really even to feel love for one another. So their relationship sours, both in their mutual despair, and eventually, Carly checks herself into a psychiatric facility because she can neither accept the consequences of their deal with the devil, nor can she figure a way out of the bargain, and she's been working at it. After Carly is gone, Owen remains in their apartment, and he ends up having a near-death experience at the hand of a bookie that he owes a bunch of money to. In his momentary brush with the afterlife, Owen has a reunion with the devil, and he learns 3 things about hell. 1. The form of torture the devil prefers is to build up great hope in his subjects and then tear it away from them over and over again. 2. The devil has determined that a casino is the perfect form for hell to take. Not just for Owen, but for everybody. It's a place of vice, a place where hopes run the highest, and a place where the greatest defeats unfold. And then 3rd, Owen learns that the souls that the devil owns from making deals with people on Earth, like Owen and Carly, are all kept in the casino's vault. Can you see where we're going from here? Before she went off to the psychiatric hospital, Carly had discovered the identities of other people who had struck similar deals with the devil. Owen finds this list, and now he's going to set off to assemble his heist team from the names that he's found on the list. So the second half of this first issue is almost completely taken up with Owen assembling his team, which is always one of the most fun parts of a good heist story. The final member of the team is going to be Carly, but as it turns out, after she had voluntarily checked herself into this psychiatric hospital, she was later moved to another facility where she was committed against her will. So, the team is actually going to have 2 heists they have to pull. First, we've got to break Carly out of the hospital, and then second, they've got to break their souls out of the casino vault of hell. As we get ready to set out on this heist from hell, which I am so excited to watch unfold, I'm also left with this question of whether this is even happening at all. Whether this isn't just another trick of the devil, building up hope in the mind of the already condemned Owen, just so that he can pull out the rug from him in the last pages of the story. I'm not sure, but I can't wait to find out. As I mentioned earlier, the art in this book is excellent. The figure work is clean, the action is all very clear, you can tell exactly what's happening on the page. And then there are excellent character designs, especially the figure of the devil, who you'll see on that cover image and looks just the same in the interior. So next, I wanted to talk about Falling in Love on the Path to Hell, which has released issues 1 and 2 so far. Credits on this book, it's written by Gerry Duggan, art by Gary Brown, colors by Chris O'Halloran, letters by Joe Sabino, logo and design by Elliot Gray, and it's published by Image Comics. At the point where we are after 2 issues, this book is really hard to categorize. It starts as a Western, pretty quickly it moves to a samurai story. Writer Gerry Duggan tells us in the back matter of the first issue that this is in fact a romance. There are sci-fi and fantasy elements to this story. At one point it looks like it's going to become kind of a battle royale, survival of a deadly island story, and I think that is where most of our action is going to take place. It's also a monster and a zombie story on this island. Whatever it's going to be ultimately, this book is ultra violent. So let's set this up just a little bit. We start with our Western story. It's 1877 and our setting is Los Angeles, California. We're introduced to one of our 2 protagonists here, a man by the name of McCraith. Through 2 issues, I don't think we've even gotten a first name for him, just McCraith. He's a cowboy who's out for revenge, and he is a ruthless character. There's a rich man who has wronged him somehow, and he's got a gang of hired guns who are basically his bodyguards. McCraith tracks them down in a Los Angeles cathedral. They've taken sanctuary, basically, inside this church. He goes in and he dispatches them right there in the worship hall with absolutely no mercy. But he's shot in the process, and he's wounded. I'm going to say mortally, with a question mark, wounded, because that's going to be a little unclear, as we'll see. Well, from there we make this stark jump to a completely separate story. This is our samurai story. Again, the year is 1877. We're on the island of Kyushu, Japan, and this story introduces us to the second of our 2 protagonists, Ogata Asami. Asami is among the last of the samurai who are turning in their weapons and submitting to the Imperial Japanese government at the end of the Satsuma Rebellion. But when she witnesses one insult too many in the process of surrendering her weapons, she initiates a brutally violent fight, swords, guns, blades of other types, between the remaining samurais and the government soldiers. She fights valiantly, and at one point she even captures the head of one of the government officials that she holds up high for everybody to see. But she's cut or stabbed somehow in this battle, and she's wounded. Again, mortally? ? McCraith and Asami each make their way to their respective shore of the Pacific Ocean, and they each see a vision of an island, the same island, that for the rest of us probably doesn't really exist. They're each taken by a storm, and they wash up on the beach of this island among a host of dead bodies just scattered everywhere in what we'll later learn is called the corpse tide. McCraith and Asami appear to be the only two survivors of that day's corpse tide, and they quickly learn that the island is inhabited by giant, multi-eyed, multi-limbed monsters, and who knows what else. They soon meet a soldier from India by the name of Mohan, who says that he's the leader of all the survivors on the island, and he's going to be their guide. Issue 2 of this book is largely an expanded introduction to the island itself. Mohan describes the island, which he calls Insula Equilibrium, as something akin to purgatory in the Judeo-Christian tradition. He says that growing up in India he was told of 28 hells, but he thinks he might have found the 29th, and there's no escaping it. Really, all they can do is try and survive there. And Mohan tells them that their only hope of survival is to unite with the other survivors of the corpse tides and fight off the monsters and the rising dead, or the zombies, that live on this island. Issue 2 ends with a giant first battle with the reanimated dead. McCraith and Asami both discover that they're somehow healed from the wounds that had brought them to the island in the first place. They plainly don't like each other, but we're told that Issue 3 is going to be called The Afterlife's Worst First Date. In answering some reader mail in the back matter of Issue 2, writer Gerry Duggan says that the creative team intends to develop the romance between McCraith and Asami over a longer run of issues. We don't know how many issues this series is planned for exactly, but it sounds like it's intended to be a longer story format. I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to stick with the book, and I think this one's going to be a lot of fun along the way, too. Gerry Duggan is an excellent writer, and while the story is weird, at least at this point, his writing makes it enjoyable the whole way along, so I'm excited for this one. Guys, I just wanted to check in, talk to you about these two books this week. I hope you all are doing great. I look forward to speaking with you next week, and until then, keep reading those comics.